What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the sequel to the billion-dollar hit that came out 5 years ago. But my, how the world has changed in that 5-year interim. And I'm just in awe of just like the wreckage and the ruins and just all the rubble of the once popular DC extended universe. It's just incredible how after 10 years, the way this is drawing to a close with so much failure over the last 12 months. I just looked up a list of all the films in the DC extended universe, as well as those that were released outside of it. And if you go back to fall of 2022 with Black Adam, to have Black Adam, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Blue Beetle, and now Aquaman. I mean, 5 horrible films in a row, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is one of the biggest money losers of 2023, or easily one of the worst movies of 2023, and it's got plenty of healthy competition on that front. I feel like no studio has been immune to failure over the last year, but the superhero genre, good God, people are going to be studying 2023 for years, just trying to figure out where did this genre that seemed to be able to do no wrong and lose no money, like how did it completely implode so rapidly and so quickly? And I think it all boils down to quality. And I think the big debate for this movie is going to be, is it like dumb fun or is it just dumb? And I think you could probably make a case for both. If people wanted to go turn off the brain, take a fistful of edibles, just lie back and look at all the sparkly colors, by all means. I won't tell you that you are in the wrong, but if you at all expect this movie to be, a decent superhero movie or a movie that's anywhere close to the original Aquaman from 5 years ago, save your time, save your money. It's a colossal waste of time. And this movie suffered from a variety of delays and reshoots, but as I was watching it, what it reminded me of was like a situation in an emergency room where you have a dying person who's dying from like a million fatal wounds all at once, and you have all these doctors that are all basically competing with one another, trying to save it at the same time, and sometimes they're stepping on each other's toes, sometimes they're shoving each other out of the way, but it feels like a movie that's being pulled in 100 different directions. And my understanding is that James Wan was basically left out a lot of the preview process and a lot of the re-editing and the reshoots. And my attitude is, if you have a director as talented as James Wan, because he might be the only director in the world who can claim to have directed a billion-dollar hit in 2 separate franchises. He did the 7th Fast and the Furious, and obviously did the first Aquaman. Both movies made over $1 billion. I'd be inclined to listen to whatever he has to say. Clearly, the guy knows how to make entertainment that generates vast sums of money. But this movie, it's so sloppy and has such poor execution, and has such horrible special effects, and so many strange, weird continuity jumps and just strange editing choices. We're like, was that scene shot like 5 years after that previous one? Or how come that character suddenly featured prominently in the scene when they haven't even been like reintroduced in the movie yet? Like Nicole Kidman comes out of nowhere. It's just amazing how disjointed and just how trashy the whole experience feels overall. And if they had made this movie for $2 million instead of $200 million, and the idea of this being made for $200 million is ridiculous. That might have been the original budget when it was first greenlit. Who knows how much money was spent on it overall, but like, I don't mind a little trash if the movie's super low budget, but if you're spending like, this much money on a flick and employing all these movie stars and bringing in a giant director like James Wan, you expect some entertainment. At a minimum, you expect a thrill ride. But this is one of those movies where it feels like every single creative decision was driven by the idea of trying to make the movie appeal to the lowest common denominator out there. Like if your idea of intellectual stimulation is sitting in the bathtub, farting and biting the bubbles, more power to you. Have at it. But this is the movie equivalent of that task, or eating your own boogers and claiming it's a delicacy. But here's the, here's the joke's on me, or here's the ironic ingredient of this whole experience. I actually felt some chills at the end of the movie, and I'm going to die from humiliation, shame, and embarrassment even acknowledging this, because I was just miserable throughout like the entire movie, just hating every single moment. But then at the very end, just because I like Jason Momoa and Patrick Wilson, when they had a little bonding scene, and this is involuntary, but I felt little chills on my neck. I was like, oh my God. So no matter how much I might look down on this movie or the people that it's designed for, I'm one of them, because I was enjoying it on some level. So I do think some people will defend this movie and say, look, it's dumb fun. Who cares? But my attitude is the DC universe or the DC Comics like library is one of the coolest creations by the human imagination of the last 100 years. It has limitless potential, thousands of fascinating characters, so much great history, so many great sagas to be explored. And it all just feels like this giant wasted opportunity that is like, once again, after 10 years, ending with a whimper as opposed to a bang. And I would love to hear from some insiders over at Warner Brothers whether or not 2023 has been regarded as a successful year for their feature film division or a failure, because obviously Barbie made like $1.5 billion. That'll help you overlook and kind of hide a lot of your losses on other movies. But Shazam! Fury of the Gods definitely lost money. Flash lost tons of money. I have a feeling that Blue Beetle lost a bundle. This is going to lose a bundle. Like, are they coming out a little bit ahead or a little bit behind? And just today I've been hearing all these rumors about how Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery are in conversations to merge, creating a giant super entity. And I guess, part of me, if you love like classic Hollywood and you love the classic studios, the idea of Paramount and Warner Brothers merging is kind of an abominable prospect. But my attitude also is like, unless you're going to change your business practices and actually like make better movies, smarter movies with more reasonable budgets, you're only prolonging the agony of defeat. I mean, you're just going to keep making more and more failures like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Because this is just a complete and total soulless enterprise, devoid of joy, devoid of entertainment. And when you see how like they've tried to basically put a thin coat of paint over a lot of familiar ingredients from other movies. Like I was even detecting ingredients from Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, and World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. Like the villains here who have no personality whatsoever, or at least the villain that is threatening to reemerge. It basically feels like they took a few ingredients from the opening of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and stirred it in with Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, as well as Wrath of the Lich King, and came up with the most bland, generic villains humanly possible who imbue black mana with a little bit of extra power. And my heart goes out to Yahya Abdul-Mateen II because he's totally game. I mean, he's a very talented actor. He's got tons of charisma, tons of star power. I feel like he could do just about anything that they asked him to do. And they asked him to do so precious little, just sharing all these really, I don't know, I wouldn't say cringy, but just kind of lackluster, boring, silly scenes with Randall Park. And I like Randall Park. He's a very talented actor. He's better with like comedic performances, but you basically have Black Manta and Dr. Stephen Shin trying to rediscover the Lost Kingdom. And the Lost Kingdom has been, kind of shunned by all the underworld kingdoms for thousands of years, where they're going to basically try to melt the planet in order to free all these bad guys and reclaim their power. And so as a result, Arthur Curry, a.k.a. Aquaman, has to team up with his brother, Ocean Master, a.k.a. King Orm, to stop him. And I guess in theory, it could have been a really fun, exciting, like buddy movie where you have two brothers who hate each other, who want to fight each other, but who are forced to team up to defeat a common foe. But I cannot emphasize this enough. This movie might have the worst action scenes of any movie that I saw this year. And I think I saw more new releases in 2023 than in any other year in my life. But all the action scenes suffer from precisely the same problem, where they feel very rushed, they feel very sloppy, you can't tell what the hell's going on, and they fail to convey any sort of thrills or excitement or any entertainment value, where the world building here is so superficial and so paper thin. Like, oh, here's a big giant city filled with all these crazy looking underwater creatures. And now let's have a bunch of people soaring through at the speed of light. So you can't even tell like what's whizzing by as you're having fight scenes. And it all just feels like it was kind of slapped together in record time. And this movie, it was delayed by a full year. They had plenty of time to get the special effects right. And once again, they spent plenty of money on it. They had all the money and all the time in the world to get it right. And it still feels sloppy and incoherent. And the fight scenes just have like the laziest physics and the laziest CGI. And that this whole expression of like fixing things in post has got to go bye-bye. I know that line is more attributed to Marvel these days, where like they'll start a movie before the screenplay is finished, or even what they know what the movie's going to be about, and they try to fix it in post. And my attitude always is, fix it in development, fix it on the page, fix it on the screenplay. It's much cheaper to fix something with pencil and paper than it is with a lot of expensive special effects. But goddamn, these are some of the worst special effects I've seen in a long time. And I just feel like all the thrills and excitement of watching Jason Momoa with a trident beating the fuck out of people that we've enjoyed in previous movies, like the Snyder Cut of Justice League and things like that, all those thrills are gone. It doesn't even look like he even cares anymore because he didn't even really bother to get in shape for this. He's wearing this like muscle suit that's kind of meant to disguise the fact that he's not as like ripped and shredded as he once was. But because the suit's gotten so big now, he just had kind of this big, lumbering, stiff-looking dude, like a big muscle-bound oaf. And the whole Jason Momoa shtick that he's been using for Aquaman, I guess for like the last 7 years now, it has gotten real tired. It is worn thin. It's like, how many times can you hear him deliver lines the exact same way? He just kind of a big, dumb meathead. I mean, he's a very likable, charismatic actor. I mean, I love him in Game of Thrones. I like him on quite a few things. I like seeing him pop up in things like Dune. But goddamn, this whole franchise, it is time for it to go away. And James Gunn, he's got the world's most colossal creative challenge in front of him because he's got basically like a year and a half to convince people to forget everything they loved and hated about the DC Extended Universe and look at his new DC Universe with fresh eyes. But the thing is, like, prior to the DC Extended Universe, we'd seen Superman and we'd seen Batman and we'd seen like the Wonder Woman TV show. We'd seen a lot of animation, but like the prospect of seeing a lot of obscure characters in live action for the first time was very exciting. But now people are over the shit. They're tired of the shit. Like, how do you change audience perception to the point where the DC universe can feel vibrant and exciting and unique again? I mean, once again, James Gunn, he could do it, but this is the biggest challenge of James Gunn's career moving forward to Superman Legacy. But another interesting challenge for this movie is whether or not people can stomach the idea of watching Amber Heard in a movie. They tried to hide her presence in the trailers. I mean, you saw one brief shot of her punching glass, and that was it. Amber Heard has a big role in this movie. It's not as big as it was in the first Aquaman, but your mileage may vary on whether or not you love Amber Heard or loathe Amber Heard. She's a pretty girl, but she's definitely, let's just say that she brings a lot of baggage with her to the table. I have no idea what the future might hold for Amber Heard, but I think if and when this movie fails and loses tons of money, it's only going to compound her problems as a movie star moving forward. But I guess my biggest, most lingering impression of this movie is just how dumb it is. And I'm not saying dumb always has to be bad, but like a lot of the costumes for the villains in this are ripped straight from Mario Bava's classic kind of schlocky film, Planet of the Vampires, a low-budget film from the late 60s where ridiculous-looking suits are part of the charm. If you like watching old-fashioned horror films or science fiction films or shows or whatever, the clunky special effects and the clunky dialogue and the kind of ridiculous costumes become part of the overall appeal. But in a $200 million movie, you expect people to look like complete and total badasses. But anyway, Planet of the Vampires, I guess somebody making this movie loves that movie and is like, look, let's just take all these costumes and drop them right into this flick. But the humor is just idiotic from start to finish. I lost track of how many times characters peed in the mouth of Aquaman. It's like two early on and then like another later on. Maybe I missed a fourth when I left to go to the bathroom at one point. But it's like, yeah, maybe peeing in the mouth is funny one time, but it's like, you're just going back to that same well over and over again because you must have thought it was so hilarious the first time. You're just going to keep reusing that same stupid gag throughout the whole movie. And the music, the original score as well as the needle drops are awful. They used Born to Be Wild on multiple occasions. I'm like, sorry, after Easy Rider used that, no one gets to use Born to Be Wild ever again. It's going to immediately make your movie feel stale, familiar, and it'll never be cooler than in the opening credits for Easy Rider. So just leave Born to Be Wild alone. There are a million other songs out there you could use. But even if you're not 150,000 years old and have never seen Easy Rider, the most shameless needle drop is the liberal use of Spirit in the Sky throughout this movie. And it's like, Guardians of the Galaxy just used that basically extensively in their trailers back in 2014. It's one of the reasons that those trailers made such a huge impression when they first dropped. And it was included on the soundtrack, even if Spirit in the Sky wasn't officially in the movie. But that Spirit in the Sky flavor, that sound, was a big part of the initial positive first impression of Guardians of the Galaxy. And that only came out 9 years ago. And I'm sorry, if you're making yet another superhero movie, you don't get to borrow the needle drops from your rivals over at Marvel. It just makes you seem like Johnny-come-lately. It makes you seem like a rip-off artist. It just makes everything feel stale, familiar. And I don't know why Hollywood does this, but it seems like there's 20 acceptable songs that are okay to be used in these big giant popcorn movies. There are billions of songs out there. Find another one. When you hear an overly familiar song like that dropped into a movie, it just feels like some creative exec walked into a meeting and was like, hey, market research shows that people like this song when they saw it in the trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy. That movie was popular. Let's take that song and put it in our movie. It'll totally work. It's like, no, it worked then 9 years ago. Now you have to do something fresh, do something new. This is why the superhero genre is dying, is that it all feels familiar and lazy. And what it desperately needs is more filmmakers who grew up reading comics, who love and cherish their, their long boxes and their graphic novels, and want to bring, the best goddamn comic book stories in comic book history to the screen. Because, the superhero genre, it's become the laziest, most familiar, just lamest genre in all of entertainment. And I totally understand why people are walking away from superhero movies in droves. And obviously nothing lasts forever. I mean, the superhero genre was destined to kind of draw to a close in movies at some point, but it almost feels like a lot of these filmmakers and studios are deliberately like dying from self-inflicted wounds. Like, it's one thing to kind of go extinct. It's another thing to commit industry-wide suicide. But I guess it just means that these studios are going to have to go back to the drawing board and cook up some new genres and or rediscover some old ones, like historical epics or erotic thrillers or screwball comedies or teenage sex comedies or whatever the case might be. There are a million different genres out there. And obviously Hollywood has overly relied upon superheroes for the last 10, 15 years, but it's fucking done. And I think even if someone like Matt Reeves makes a great sequel to his movie The Batman, or even if James Gunn makes a killer movie out of Superman Legacy, I don't know if the damage can be undone or reversed. The movie would have to be so fucking good, so incredible, and I think audiences are just ready for some new experiences. And who knows, maybe things like The Boys will continue to stick around. Like, maybe that's the answer, like hard R graphic entertainment. But for me, reaching the end of this 10-year journey with the DCEU, it's very bittersweet, because as someone who grew up reading, stacks upon stacks of comics, and perhaps like the stories just a little bit too much, when I think about what could have been and all the great stories that could have been told and all the unique characters that could have been unveiled and exposed to the world, and once again, it just feels like the world's biggest wasted opportunity. Because if you look at all the DCEU movies from the Man of Steel up through now, how many great movies came out of this whole process? I'm going to look at the list right now. I mean, I enjoyed a lot of these. I enjoyed Man of Steel, and I enjoyed Batman v Superman in spurts. There's plenty of it that I did not. I enjoyed the No Man's Land sequence from Wonder Woman. And I enjoyed Aquaman from 2018. Probably my favorite of all these from the DCEU would be The Suicide Squad. I think it's probably the best superhero movie of the 2020s. But most of these movies are just trash. They're just fucking terrible. And so, I guess good riddance. The DC Extended Universe is dead. Long live the DC Universe. And we'll just have to wait and see what comes our way summer 2025. So I think it's time to wrap this video up. I can tell I'm making myself sad and depressed by even doing this review. Not because I feel bad for anybody involved with this movie, just because I can feel an era drawing to a close, and it's an era that I always dreamed of as a kid in the 80s and 90s. Wouldn't it be cool if all my favorite comic books got adapted in the movies? But eventually, my dream became a nightmare, and I guess the real sweet spot of the superhero genre as movies, probably from 2008 to 2012, where suddenly movies like Iron Man and The Dark Knight were showing what was really possible, but at the same time, you had these weird kind of edgy ones like Kick-Ass and Super and things like that on the side. So you got to have your fucked up weird indie comics and your big mainstream ones all delivering, all firing on all cylinders. And it seemed like it was a genre that was attracting the most talented filmmakers in the world. And now it just feels like a genre where actors and filmmakers go to fucking die. So on that rosy, optimistic note, I'm going to wrap this video up. Hope you enjoyed just hearing me piss and moan for the last however many minutes this review was. If so, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell so that you can enjoy all my depressing rants in the future. But thanks again for watching. I greatly appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.